Hi class, and welcome back to my vlogs for Films About Painting Spring 2020. And today I will be discussing film 14 and Salvador Dali. And primarily I'm going to be figuring it out. Was this film hard to watch? I would give that a hard yes. And I'm going to talk about why it was, but I'm also going to talk about why it wasn't. And I'm also going to use some of my historical context to kind of justify why I think it might be a little hard to watch at times. As we know, well, I know, but Dalí was a supporter of Francisco Franco, who was like the Spanish ruler, and he was a fascist. So is Dalí a fascist? I'm gonna add that up. Yeah, he is. And so that could kind of give some context as to what we're seeing, and how he's acting at times. That was just like kind of deeply disturbing and like violent, and yeah. So let's get into it. So of the 6 choices we were given to discuss about in the videos we're making, I chose the 3 that were, I chose to talk about a scene, Dalí speaking, and the narrator's description, and how this kind of defines the film and kind of like reiterates Dalí's art. But first I'm going to talk about the scene, and it's like right at the beginning, and it kind of like, it threw me off because like watching it made me remember that Dalí's not a good person. So I was like, oh yeah, and it made me do a lot of research. And so I'm going to talk about that scene at the beginning where Dalí is like, he's like smashing on a piano, wearing like a crazy outfit and a wig, and then like his sheet music is like a picture of demons, and then there's like these cats everywhere, and there's like these people in a cave dancing, and like it's just like so deeply disturbing. And so from there it just felt violent. It wasn't, to me, like when I saw that, I didn't see, and I will say this, but and you won't hear me say this a lot because I consider a lot of things art, but to me, it didn't see art. I just saw Dalí being crazy. And I don't like using the word crazy either, but I just don't like him. Sorry. But let's talk about it. So I am on the article called "It's Really Surreal How Salvador Dalí Was a Fascist Who Hit Women" by Lauren Euler. And this is on Vice.com, which is a little questionable, but whatever. So Lauren Euler goes on to say, the beloved painter was also violent. At age 5, Dalí writes in his autobiography, he pushed a boy off a high suspension bridge. At 6, he premeditated a terrible kick to his 3-year-old sister's head as though it had been a ball. Not simply childish, not knowing better, this baseless cruelty continued as Dalí got older. Often it seemed he cultivated admiration, only to become disgusted with those he sought it from. For 5 years as a teen, he teased a girl who he was in love with, exciting her with kisses and touching, but then refusing to give her anything more. When he was 29, he trampled a girl who remarked on the beauty of his bare feet. So true that I have found her insistence on this stupid matter, until his companions had to tear her bleeding from his clutches. What? So I don't think this guy is like amazing. I just think he's like very violent and probably suffers from a lot of like toxic masculinity. And like, I guess I'm seeing this as an English major, and I'm sure a lot of art majors see the same way. But when I see cats, and those are like what are screaming, like meowing, and you only see their heads, and he's like pounding on the piano, there's like a lot of imagery there, like, I don't know, like, I don't want to say it, but like pussycats, you get what I'm trying to say. And like, I feel very uncomfortable watching it as a woman, given that we really haven't had a lot of women we've been seeing through this, which I understand because it's been a male-dominated world forever, but it is very hard to watch as a woman, kind of knowing this context and knowing he treats women really grotesquely, and I'm not into it, and it's just very hard to watch when you know this, and then there's this outside information that kind of reaffirms his violence, And it's seen, though, like, it's physically seen through his art, his violence. So I found that very difficult to watch. Not just as this is really weird, but this is like, there's some implications here that you could really read into, and, you know, just not into it. Another issue with the film was, I don't know if this was due in part to maybe Dalí's accent, which there's nothing wrong with an accent. Sometimes it could just be a little hard to misunderstand if you're not used to hearing it, or if it's from, like, the actual quality of the film itself. But Dalí's speaking was like, I didn't understand a single word. I just kind of was like, I don't know what's going on, but I could see through the images, like, what might be going on. But I know at some points, he says at, like, around, like, the 9-minute and 30-second mark, he says, "It is normal because nobody understands Dalí, because myself never understand my bark." I don't know if it's the word bark or not, so just bear with me. Never understand one painting of Dalí. So that's what I was able to hear, one of the only things I was able to hear. And I think this kind of coincides with maybe, like, a metaphorical thing. And if it is, sure. If it's a surrealist film and that's what you're trying to do, I think it didn't necessarily, like, make it hard to watch. It just kind of was, like, confusing, if that makes sense. But, like, in my head, I was like, maybe this is an art choice, and I'm into it then, because it's kind of interesting if, like, if he's considered a misunderstood artist, let's make him misunderstood. So I went to the article 5 Sadistic and Depraved Secrets of Salvador Dalí by Alejandro Lopez, and no, I'm not going to talk about those secrets, but I'm going to talk about his intro that he wrote on him. And he said, Alejandro states, it is inevitable that the greatest cultural figures of all time are surrounded by myths. Some are so outlandish they border on the macabre and morbid. The artist who painted the 20th century with his eccentricity, madness, and enigmatic personality is no exception. Considered to be a genius by some and pathetic by others, the figure of Dalí has never escaped the spotlight. The diabolical dreamscape of his paintings, his expulsion from Breton and his surrealist group, and the way he ensnared his public make of this Catalan artist the focal point of the most delirious myths. He had an enthralling and egocentric personality, and he rested on the laurels of luxury and excess. Every facet of this painter made him the embodiment of surrealism itself. So if he is the embodiment of surrealism, well, I guess that could take into account his voice and how he speaks, and can we understand it? Do we have to understand it? And I think that is something, at least that's how I look at surrealist work, is like, do we have to understand it? Because it can be hard to interpret, but we can garner our ideas based on what we see on imagery. But in this case, especially with a film, we could figure that out from sound. And I guess I never really thought about surrealist sound or the way someone talks, but that could definitely be something included in it. And I guess if that's what they were trying to do, only if that's what the filmmaker was trying to do, cool. But if not the greatest quality in the world, kind of hard to pay attention to because you can't understand anything going on. Yeah, so now I'm just going to pop up real quick an image of Dalí looking surreal, especially with his mustache and the way this, like, crab, I guess, is on his head. And I like how his mustache goes up, but the crab's legs go down. That's a little interesting because it's not normal. It, like, defies gravity for his mustache to go up, and the fact that he was able to style it that way. So this is just something I kind of consider surreal. And it kind of really embodies, like, how Dalí was and how he chose to present himself. So the last thing I want to mention, and I think this is what genuinely made it an interesting film, and these were the times that it was easy to pay attention because you could hear what was going on. The narrator's voice was very clear, and I felt like the narrator had, like, their own weirdness and, like, silliness to it, and I enjoyed that, because I think if you're gonna make a painting about a surrealist, it makes zero sense to me to be serious. Because doesn't that kind of counteract the whole point? And you don't really get it then. You can't get as close to the artwork or what you're researching or whatever as much as possible if you are just staying serious, you know? So the narrator at one point says, "A lengthy and exhausting journey brought the movie makers to his door. He seemed weary." And then we see Dali, like, looking out the window like, what's going on? And I thought that was funny. And then cameras and tape recorders were turned on, but turned on was what the divine Dalí was not. And I thought that was also funny. And then there's a time where the narrator is asking Dalí questions, and Dalí kept saying no to like every single question, even if it's like not a yes or no question. And I like that. I think that really showed, I guess it helped to understand more when the narrator was kind of like a character himself and communicating with Dalí. And I think that makes it easier to understand. Maybe for someone, again, it's not like I've done a ton of research on Dalí. I really just know his political views, which are not amazing. I mean, like, he was a Hitler apologist. Like, okay, not that amazing then, you know, but, yeah, so that's pretty much all I got for today. Sorry if this is kind of negative. I wasn't feeling this film. I'm also in quarantine and I'm still going to work. Anyway, you guys all stay safe. Please wash your hands for 20 seconds. And yeah, have a good day.